Cuts. Cradle under the star.
Hello, fellow Clock Tower fans. Welcome to another episode of Deep Cuts. Provided by us at Team Cuts, we deliver the details to you, the Clock Tower community. I'm your host, Cuts co-founder, Diario. Let's welcome today's guest, tangomushi.
Hello, hello, hello. How we doing?
Surviving. It's a very hot day over here in California.
Oh my goodness. It was actually lashing rain today over in Ireland, which is very characteristic. So hopefully we can send some of those clouds over to you.
Was it the cold kind of rain or was it like humid rain?
Freezing cold. Freezing cold. First time we've had a cold day in quite a while, actually. So I welcome it.
Oh, are the summers brutal over there in Ireland?
Probably not nearly as bad as Cali, but this summer was pretty rough, not gonna lie. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much for coming on to this podcast. For those that are unfamiliar with you, go ahead and please give an introduction to yourself.
Yes, hello, how are we doing? My name is tangomushi. I am a Irish horror creator. I mainly specialize in retro and indie horror in particular, so stuff like Resident Evil, Silent Hill, Clock Tower, obviously. Yeah, that's a streamer and YouTuber.
What was your introduction to video gaming? Like, was your first game a horror game or was it another genre?
I would say that my first introduction was probably, God, my oldest memory is something like Kingdom Hearts. That was, I played that when I was probably like 6 or 7, the OG Kingdom Hearts, and Final Fantasy X. It was one of those was my introduction. To be fair, I got into horror pretty quickly, but I would say that when I was maybe like 9, 10, 11, I played, I think it was Resident Evil 4 was my first one.
Oh my god.
And that definitely, it became an obsession. And that definitely opened the floodgates to the rest of horror as a genre. Yeah.
Did you play the GameCube version of Resident Evil 4 or was it the PS2 version? Which version of RE4 did you get into?
I was never much of a Nintendo kid growing up. I'm so sorry. So
okay.
I was PS2.
It's okay. I'm curious because like I know that there are certain differences between versions from what I've heard. I'm not as big into the Resident Evil series as I am in my Clock Tower knowledge. I'm sure anyone in the audience will be able to point out the differences, but
I think it's the PS2 version had some additions. I could be wrong because I think that came out later. So they add in like the separate ways extra scenario, I believe, but I could be wrong about that. The GameCube version is meant to be great though. It's meant to be a great version of the game.
Right. Okay. I know Resident Evil 4 was one of the Capcom games that was part of the exclusivity deal with Nintendo around that time.
Yeah, and I think Remake was another one. Because that was locked to GameCube for a long time.
Oh, yes. Remake was, it was Remake, the OG RE2, OG RE3, which I now have to say OG because we live in a world of remakes, which isn't bad. We have Code Veronica X, I believe was also a part of it, and RE4.
Oh my god, Nintendo got everything. Now I need to go out and get a GameCube. I'm like 20 years late, but I need to get a GameCube.
Thank you, Nintendo. Thank you, Mikami. So then, what games are you playing currently?
Well, clearly my taste in games has not changed whatsoever because the games I'm juggling at the moment are actually the Resident Evil 4 Remake, Separate Ways DLC, and Final Fantasy XIV, the MMO. It's one of the MMOs.
So content rich.
Exactly, right?
Yeah, so I've
a bit of Baldur's Gate on the side as well, actually.
I have friends who are neck deep into Baldur's Gate. It's I've heard it's a very enjoyable experience.
Yeah, it just grabs you, and then before you know, 50 hours are gone, and whoops, you know.
I love games that really are about like the experience. You know, purely. Yeah,
like they envelop you. That's something that gaming has over like books and TV shows and films is that you can get so engrossed in them in a way you can't with other media. So yeah, I'm totally with you on that.
How do you feel the video games are being treated now as a medium? I mean, I think video games nowadays are bigger than they have been previously, and you as a video game content creator, you've definitely seen how much video gaming has grown with like, you know, now with like all the content rich adventures that we're getting.
I'm so glad that gaming has like you know, it's become such a, you know, games cost so much to make, and I feel like they're a lot more respected now than they were before. I would like to hope. I think that your average person now can kind of understand that, oh, wow, this isn't just a niche hobby anymore. It's probably like anyone under the age of 40 and definitely anyone under the age of 30 probably has played games at some point in their life. So it's becoming a massive mainstay, hobby or interest. But I'm glad to see how it's grown. I would say that there's, sometimes that AAA budget that we've got nowadays can be a bit of a bad thing because it means some developers aren't willing to take risks anymore, like they might have been 20 years ago, which is a bit of a downside, like I guess from an artistic perspective. But ultimately, I'm glad where we're at. I think it's exciting. It's an exciting time for gaming.
Right. I definitely agree. Definitely. I can't wait to see what the next years coming forward will bring for the gaming world. One of those games happens to be Clock Tower. Surprise!
Let's go!
I mean, it's not like it's
Hell
not
yeah.
like this is a Clock Tower. It's not like we're talking about Clock Tower or anything, but actually, why don't we go back to Clock Tower? How did you discover Clock Tower? Like your first actual introduction to the series, was it through a publication such as a video form magazine? Did you stumble upon the series by chance? How did you get into Clock Tower?
I think what it was it was one of those games that I saw crop up in YouTube reviews. So like I never got into, personally, I was never much of a Let's Play person. I kind of preferred watching things more like reviews or, retrospectives. We kind of have video essays now, but back then it was a lot more straightforward on YouTube. It was kind of more just like straight up reviews of games. And I remember Clock Tower cropping up when I would obviously watch horror things. I would see Clock Tower SNES in particular crop up a lot, and I was just kind of fascinated by it visually. I've always loved pixelated styles of gameplay or graphics rather, and I was drawn to it that way. And of course, I'm sure a lot of people can probably relate to this one, but the infamous JonTron video of Clock Tower gave that game it gave a lot of exposure to it, of course, didn't it? And I think that was probably what partially cemented my interest in it. I was like, okay, this is cool. And I finally, I had a Japanese PlayStation 3 account, so I was able to download the Japanese version of Clock Tower, the PS1 version, actually, it would have been if it was on PS3. But either way, same game for the most part. And that was my first playing experience of it, which was very exciting.
That's so cool. Yeah, I think Clock Tower First Sphere, Clock Tower 2, and I don't know if Clock Tower 3 ever got a Japanese re-release on the PS3 store. I know Demento did.
I don't think 3 did. I feel I'd remember it if it did, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's escaping my mind, but great way to be introduced to the series. Shout outs to Nitro Rad as well. Nitro Rad did
Nitro Rad's videos are golden on Clock Tower.
This is a pretty unique little horror game.
Very much, and I really do. This video is going to be a lot of me simping for the SNES game. I love that game so much. I adore it.
That's okay.
I adore it with my life. It is such a treasure of a game. I love it dearly. But it's aged like fine wine. That game, in my opinion, it's oh my god, I could talk about it for hours. It's a gem of a game. Visually, I think as well. The graphical style, like there's games coming out today that replicate that visual style, and so Clock Tower in that sense, in my opinion, at least in the indie scene, I feel hasn't aged a bit.
Definitely hasn't. I don't know if we can say the same about the Wonder Swan version of Clock Tower, but however you play it, the Super Famicom, Super Nintendo version, or the Windows 95 version, or the PS1 First Sphere, there's a certain charm to the game, whether if it's for the presentation, the action of running and hiding and evading the killer, and even now with mods such as Clock Tower Deluxe, so much fun.
Yeah, it's still fun. Very much got a thriving community. Like, I think the sheer fact that Clock Tower Deluxe, I'm not sure when that came out exactly, but I believe it's fairly new. And just the fact that even came out in the last however many years, the fact there's still people out there dedicating themselves to making mods for this almost 30-year-old game is insanity to me. It just shows the staying power of it, really.
Throughout your playing of the series, be it Clock Tower 2, Ghost Head 3, even Haunting Ground, aka Demento or Nightcry, do you have any standout moments from your gameplay of the series? Any like key moments that pop up when you think Clock Tower is like, oh, I remember this moment vividly?
With two things mainly come to mind, one positive and one negative. With the with Clock Tower SNES, or this might have been an addition in the PS1 version, I'm not quite sure, but it's the monster that you find in the locker, and you interact with the locker, you look in there, the monster's eyes look at you, and then I believe you have to use a dagger to kill it. I'm blanking which
Yes.
version of Clock Tower SNES this is from, but I still distinctly remember my first time seeing that, and it really got to me. I don't know what it was. It's just, I think it's because I couldn't figure out what I was looking at. It's like, at first I was like, is that a monkey? Like, I couldn't figure out what it was, but I think my confusion is what scared me, because I couldn't make heads or tails of it, and I died, obviously, because I didn't have the item required. But
Right.
that's a definitely standout moment, and I think Clock Tower SNES is full of those moments, those inexplicable, weird, haunting kind of moments, and maybe some people might laugh at those, and that's fair enough, I suppose, but for me personally, it actually kind of got to me. It confused me, and in my confusion, I got scared. But on a more negative note, with a good old Ghost Head, I streamed
Oh,
I streamed all the Clock Towers back to back in, I think, February this year, maybe March, and I was basically doing a Clock Tower per stream. Excuse me, I was doing a Clock Tower per stream, because each of them are like what, like 4, 5, 6 hours.
yeah, more or less.
So I was like, hey, that's a nice long stream, one and done kind of thing, and inevitably got to Ghost Head, and I tried my darndest to play it without a walkthrough for the first chapter, and obviously had to resort to a walkthrough, being the game that it is.
No
And
shame.
I don't think I've ever been tested by a game as much as I was, like, trying to still keep my composure and sanity and hopefully be entertaining in front of an audience of viewers while playing what is arguably one of the most painful experiences ever, was memorable in all the worst ways. And it's a shame, because I actually really like Ghost Head. As much as I speak badly of it, I really do adore Ghost Head in everything except gameplay, but that will always stand out to me, because I even remember everyone in my chat after we finally finished it just saying, that was great, Tango, never play that again. It was just a mutual hatred for what we all just experienced together, you know?
Right. That entire third section of the game is insane.
That's the killer. That's the killer.
Totally repetitive, totally redundant. And if you didn't investigate the samurai armor in the first chapter, then you're locked into a bad ending.
Yes, and that's what happened to me when I first played Ghost Head. I naturally enough, like probably everyone else who played it, I got the samurai death, and it fueled a primal rage in me, for sure. Well, what's even worse, I think, with Ghost Head is that if you don't, like, as in, you know, you're on the good track and you actually activate the samurai suit and you're not going to have him fall through a window and kill you, you can go into a side room. I remember you can go into a side room and there's a note in there, and it gives a vague hint saying, don't forget to interact with the samurai suit.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's like, why tell me that now? I already did that. That's more valuable to someone who actually does get the samurai suit ending. Like, insane evil game design with Ghost Head.
I'd like to think that was part of just like the sinister horror that they were trying to push with the game or something, or maybe it was just an oversight, since it came out pretty close to when Human folded and filed for bankruptcy. They were probably just like trying to get this one out there, and
in that respect, Ghost Head is probably one of the scariest games ever made, if that's what they were going for.
Potentially so. That seems to be the general consensus nowadays with Ghost Head, is that the vibe, the style, and the just aesthetic of it is amazing. It's great. It's just the gameplay is what kills it. No pun intended.
100%. If the gameplay was okay, it would probably be my favorite in the franchise. It's just got such an interesting idea behind it, with the whole like dual personality, the Maxwell family, or Mitoshima, I think they're called in Japanese. It's great. It's got so much going for it, and it's crazy how you can't appreciate any of that because of the gameplay.
Yeah, if it's your first playthrough, see how far that you're willing to go before you try a walkthrough. And if you feel like this game is BS, chances are it is. You could just watch a walkthrough.
Exactly. Other people have suffered, so you don't have to with Ghost Head.
And there's always the Clock Tower wiki if you want to read up on the characters or the legend of the Maxwell curse or the Saido curse, I think is what it's called in the
Yes,
original
exactly.
version.
A really interesting lore, actually, but it's a shame.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite game, favorite story, favorite lead character, favorite stalker throughout your gameplay of the series?
I think like when you ask favorite character, the first name that comes to mind is Bates. Like he's just got, he kills it. The guy, well, he quite literally kills actually, but the voice actor kills it as Bates in English anyway. Again, like I said, the whole concept of a dual personality could have been so good if it came in a better package, I suppose. But a favorite title in the entire franchise is tied for me between the SNES one, wow, shocker, and 3, because I think SNES one is obviously a fantastic horror game. There's a reason it's getting a port almost 30 years later, is because it deserves that attention. It deserves, because as you're well aware, it never got localized officially, so it's getting the localization it deserves at long last. And then 3, because for completely opposite reasons, it's campy, it's insane, it's theatrical, it's absurd, and a strange, outlandish game, and I love that. I adore weird, and I adore absurdity, because whether you love the game, whether you hate the game, you can't deny that you'll never forget the game after you finish it. And that's something that 3 has tenfold in terms of charm and personality. And I kind of just wish camp horror was more common. More games like Clock Tower 3 would be very welcome to me. So yes, SNES and 3 for very different reasons.
Yeah, I love Super Famicom Clock Tower. It goes without saying. I agree, like it's such a unique experience.
Very
you don't
much.
even really need to play the sequels. I think it stands alone as its own entry. We're still getting people covering the series through YouTubers like Nitro Red and yourself. I've had quite a few people mention, have you seen the Clock Tower series covered by Tango? I was like, oh yeah, I know Tango.
Oh, that's awesome. Hell yeah, thank you.
That kind of like excitement and passion for series like these that helps it gain attention. And now here we are with WayForward and Sunsoft coming together for the official worldwide release of the Super Famicom game, and we know it's specifically the Super Famicom game, so happy about that.
The best version.
The best one. We'll talk a little bit more about the WayForward release later on, but talking about 3, I don't think we would have gotten the same game if Kinji Fukusaka wasn't a part of it.
Oh yeah, 100%. He's the one who injected that personality into the game for sure.
I mean, Battle Royale, hello.
Yeah, and it reeks of Clock Tower 3 at certain points, that movie. Great movie. But you can totally see the slightly kind of bombastic style that he's got going on. So the fact that Capcom somehow got him on board is insanity to me. And it's, yeah, like, you know, it's probably just because, like, I am still super into theater. I've always loved theatrical things and outlandish things like that. And 3 just feels like a stage play. It feels like, you can even see it in some cutscenes, you know, I think it's Chopper, when he's jumping around the place, the white and red color scheme guy.
Oh, yeah.
When he's jumping around the place, it looks like he's, you know, flying around the place on strings, you know, that they would have to use for stage and whatnot. And it's the fact they left those little details in, it feels like a very deliberate choice to give it a theatrical, outlandish energy. Those are the only words to describe it, and it's a crying shame it didn't do well. I can kind of see why it didn't do well. It's probably a little too out there for some, but I'm just so glad it exists, you know.
just like as you mentioned how theatrical it is, when you meet Chopper or you meet Sledgehammer, or even how big the enemy speeches are, you know, once the clock strikes 12, the ritual of engagement will begin. Yadohei, Adohei, you know, just yes. It's just so over the top, but you're just immersed in this world, and it gives Clock Tower an identity of its own crazy,
Absolutely.
crazy game.
Absolutely. And I really respect what Capcom were doing with that game in general, because it came out in that time where Silent Hill and Resident Evil were dominating, obviously. So Capcom were like, okay, well, even though they make Resident Evil, but they were like, okay, so psychological horror, Silent Hill's doing that. Monster horror, okay, Resident Evil's doing that. What can we do that none of them are doing? Okay, campy horror. And like, they killed it. They absolutely killed it. I really liked the direction they were going with. I don't know if I would have liked the whole franchise to turn into that, but I'm just glad 3 on its own exists, you know?
We're gonna give you a scissor man and also a scissor woman.
Diversity, baby.
Hell yeah, and then we have Dennis. Gotta love Dennis.
Bless him, the little dork. He means well, but
He does mean well, yeah.
he's such a little loser. Oh god, they're so endearing, all of them. Even the killers, which is a bit strange to say about a serial killer, but even they're a bit endearing.
Well, so then do you have a favorite lead character or a favorite stalker among the series? Clock Tower 3 has plenty of them.
It does, absolutely. I definitely have a soft spot for the Scissor Man and women. I know, or Scissor Man and woman from 3. I think that they are the embodiment of that absurdity that 3 does so well. But if I had to pick a number 1, it'll always go to OG Bobby.
Bobby.
He's the image. He is the image of Clock Tower, the Scissor Man. I mean, I think that, well, this might just be because I don't really like the Clock Tower PS1 game or Clock Tower 2. I could pass on that one. I think Dan is a bit of a embarrassing scissor man compared to Bobby personally. I just think Bobby is what's up. He is the face of the franchise, so you gotta give it to him. He's the king.
Long live the king.
Exactly.
Bobby's just been taking a chillaxing vacation, just ready.
Yeah, he's on hiatus, you know?
Yeah, it was just a very long break, but he's coming out of retirement. So then do you have a favorite main character? There's a lot of strong main characters within this series that you play as, so it may be hard to pick a favorite.
I feel like, you know, as obvious as it would be to just say, oh, Jennifer, obviously, I feel like Helen is a character that while I don't feel we got enough of her to see her on the same level as Jennifer, I feel like what we did see of her, she seemed a very strong protagonist. She was very, she got shit done, you know? Like I just felt like there was a good sense of courage out of her for a character that only exists in one of the titles, and I kind of wish we got to see more of that, admittedly, which is one of my gripes with the PS1 game. But I think that Jennifer, as obvious as it may be, is the queen in that regard. Like, I think especially when you realize what she went through in the OG game, SNES game, she's only like 13, 14, and she's so... Not only does she stick around and deal with Scissorman, but also tries to save her friends while she's at it. Some of whom, if I'm remembering the lore correctly, actually don't treat her very well. Some of the other girls that she went to the Barrows Mansion, she's a bit of an outsider. So if I remember correctly the lore, so she just seems like she has a good heart. So despite what she goes through, you know, the good intentions, I always appreciate that out of a character. Never mind a child going through all that, you know.
You mentioned Helen being a very standout character. When you reviewed Clock Tower 2, you played through both Jennifer and Helen's scenarios, correct?
I did, yeah.
Most people tend to gravitate towards the Jennifer storyline. There isn't like enough people who jump into the Helen storyline. And there's a fair amount of difference when you play through Helen's like last scenario. The mansion's kind of like outlines a slightly different. Did you play Jennifer first or Helen first, and then what was it like going back and forth and just kind of seeing like this other side of the story where it's like, oh well, there's Jennifer here, but then there's Helen too.
I really liked the library section with Helen when you have to. I'm trying to remember the details of it now, but you have to go to the library. I believe that's the chapter that in Jennifer's story is dedicated to Nolan. Helen's one in her story, I really liked the setting there. I really liked the progression of things, and I guess when the guy peeks his head out at the literal clock tower and then gets his head chopped off, and it's just an insane little moment. I just thought that was very memorable to me for whatever reason. I did play Jennifer's first, though, naturally enough, gravitating to the protagonists that we're more familiar with.
Right.
I guess I kind of wish that we got to see more of Helen and Jennifer's relationship, because they have quite an interesting dynamic. given the fact that Helen's only, I think she's only meant to be like, what, early 30s? She's quite young herself. And she's...
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, and she's a mother, effectively, to this child. And I always thought, oh, that's an interesting dynamic. She's not like, you know, a middle-aged woman or anything. This is someone who's not really that much older than Jennifer, taking care of her. So I kind of wish we got to see more of that, more of their back and forth and their relationship. I think that maybe in the novelization, actually, that's something that gets more love. But in the game, I went into Helen's story hoping for that, and unfortunately, we didn't get much of it, I would say.
Did you ever get to check out the novel? I think the novelization recently got translated. I don't know. I haven't had the time to like properly reread through it, so my memory is a little hazy. But there's a lot more that they do with fleshing out Helen and Jennifer's relationship. I think at one point Helen like finds out about like Jennifer, and Nolan like straight up slaps Jennifer.
Oh,
and, like,
damn.
Jennifer's like way more rebellious about, you know, I want to date Nolan, and that whole novelization has like a it's like a choose your own adventure where one of the endings, I guess, is that it's revealed that, spoiler, I guess, Jennifer is like, one of the endings is that Jennifer is a Barrows, and like Dan needs to be like reborn through Jennifer. I'm a little hazy on that detail.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I thought it would just be like, oh, fleshes out this and that, but like, wow, that's a whole subplot going on there. I love it. I haven't read them myself yet. I'm kind of saving them, and the comics. I've kind of avoided those because it's like, ooh, I'm excited to read that, to get a little bit of that lore for Clock Tower. But that's making me want to do it way sooner for sure.
Again, my memory is a little hazy. Chances are I'm probably confusing with Demento's ending, but I do remember there was like a reveal like that. I'm sorry if I spoiled it. But
no, you're fine.
But
no, that's exciting though. That sounds cool.
Who knows? I mean, maybe somewhere in the ether we could get maybe like a revision of Clock Tower 2, where we could get to see more of a development between Jennifer and Helen's relationship, because considering what she does go through in Clock Tower 1, a very traumatized young protagonist, just having like parental support, it kind of like plays into like, you know, just the horror conflict is like, oh, well, now like we're in this together.
Absolutely, yeah, exactly. A camaraderie between the two of them.
What do you think it is about Clock Tower that has generated the legacy and fan base that it has? I know we've talked extensively about the series, but if you had to narrow it down and then just kind of go into deeper explanation.
I think that really something that the West never got to experience with Clock Tower, given that the original one wasn't localized in particular, is that I don't think a lot of Western people would understand how formative Clock Tower is to the horror genre. It's really, I see it as revolutionary as titles like Resident Evil and Silent Hill, because while they furthered the genres of like, you know, fighting back with enemies and, you know, the kind of multiple endings and blah, blah, blah that you see in the OG Resident Evil and Silent Hills, what Clock Tower did is that, as far as I'm concerned, it more or less created the whole stalker or, you know, the run and hide genre, whatever you want to call it, which so many games since have replicated, like games like Amnesia, Outlast, Alien Isolation, like all of these games, if you were to trace back the history, there is at least some element of inspiration from Clock Tower. Of course, a lot of us over here, you know, or a lot of Western gamers wouldn't see that, unfortunately, because it never got localized, but whenever you even look at developers in the horror genre, it feels like Clock Tower is like your favorite horror developer's favorite game, you know, like it always gets name dropped by developers, particularly Japanese ones, naturally. And because of that, I feel like its influence is underestimated a lot. Thankfully, though, there's people like Team C.U.T.S and there's fan bases out there that do recognize that legacy, and I feel like that's what's kept it alive all these years, even though now, as of 2023, it's technically been kind of dormant for 20 years, unless you count the phone game. But in terms of a brand new release, it's been 20 years since Clock Tower 3, and it's the fact it's been kept alive instead of falling into obscurity like millions of other IPs is it's great, and I feel like it's because of how influential it really is.
I definitely agree with that. It's just a unique little series that has done a lot with the ideas of survival horror. Who would have thought that like this game would have happened by just like a contest held at Human Entertainment, and that it would become like, prior to this, Human was like, well, I think like Fire Pro Wrestling and
like
maybe
sports
a few,
games. Yeah.
Yeah. So this must have been like a completely different avenue for them, and who knows? They were probably just taking a stab in the dark, definitely. And
Isn't that crazy though, that like what is really one of the most influential titles in horror was created by pure luck of a contest. It's insanity to think that we could, as dramatic as it sounds, it's crazy to think that, had the contest not gone in Hifumi Kono's favor, Clock Tower probably never would have existed. It's wild to think about.
Wild, especially for a Super Nintendo game. I don't know if you've ever had like this instance where you would try to like introduce like Clock Tower to somebody who has never even heard of horror on a Super Nintendo. I don't know if you ever get like the reaction of like, horror game on a Super Nintendo?
Yes, always. Yeah, because, Nintendo, I wouldn't say horror is part of their brand, generally speaking. Never has been, and that's cool. Like, they're very dominant in other genres. So yeah, to think that such an important game released on the least likely console possible it's just so many interesting facets to the OG game. It's a gem.
Definitely. Since you've played quite a big deal of horror games, you have covered a lot of the Clock Tower series and also a lot of mainly popular horror games to the very obscure. You've jumped into a lot of different avenues of horror. I'm very curious to know, and I think a lot of the viewers are very curious to know, what do you think makes a strong horror game experience for you, and then what makes a weak horror game experience? And if you could provide any examples.
Let's see. A strong horror experience. I think the thing that the horror genre has over other genres is that it allows you to explore the taboo and the topics that are maybe uncomfortable to some. And to give an example, I feel like, of course, as obvious as it may be, Silent Hill 2 is a great example of that. Have you played that game by any chance?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Just confirming.
Of course.
Just confirming.
Yeah, so excited for the remake. I'm looking forward to that.
Me too, very much. Yeah, it's a game like that, for example, delves into a lot of upsetting or taboo or unsettling topics that I feel a lot of people would shy away from, and I think that's something that horror, assuming it's obviously well written and well made, it can explore that very well, and it can open up your mind to new ways of thinking, again, about topics that are less ventured, I suppose. And I think that that's Silent Hill 2 being an example. It can really stick with you afterwards. Like, you could, someone could never play it for 20 years, but they'll still distinctly remember the Mary's letter or something else impactful that happened in it. And the fact that a game can have that staying power, exploring such not talked about topics, I suppose, is, to me, that's what makes a strong horror experience. Those are that's what I look for personally when it comes to a horror game. Just having, spooky, scary gore is fine, I guess, but I want something that'll stick with me.
Right. And do you think we've been seeing more of like an experimental phase with horror? I mean, we've had Five Nights at Freddy's, Phasmophobia, a ton of others, Resident Evil with the remake series, and especially the indie scene with Remothered and with Buy Sweet Carol, and even like Puppet Combo games. Where do you think we're like heading in terms of horror? Like,
yeah, that's kind of a tough one, isn't it? Because I feel horror definitely died in the AAA scene for a few years there, and then came back swinging with, Dead Space, the remake earlier, Resident Evil 4 remake, the other remakes. But in the AAA scene, there's a lot of remakes going on. It's kind of like the horror genre has to find its footing again, and the remakes are a good way to test the waters. But in the indie scene, it's thriving. There's so many, like you said, yeah, Puppet Combo, if you want the more slasher, 80s vibes, if you want the kind of the cheesy 80s vibes, but then there's loads of games out there, like I know Signalis is a big one that takes a lot of inspiration from Silent Hill once again. There's so many branches of horror being explored in the indie scene. PT was another one that made massive waves.
Oh my god, PT.
Yeah, right?
PT is such a unique thing, and it's like, can't believe that it just like died off, and it's kind of become like lost media, that it never like really became more. Absolutely,
yeah, and there's so many indie games that try to replicate it. Now, personally, I don't think anything did it as well as PT, but I still think it's great that it's an entire branch of horror was born effectively. It's kind of like walking sim. Some people call it haunted house horror, like, you know, the walking around interactive things, blah, 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 spooky stuff happens. An entire branch of horror was born from one demo that got cancelled, you know, it's crazy.
Yeah, oh my god, shoutouts to PT, my god.
Yeah, rest in peace to the homie.
What a time. And talking about times, we're now in the time where WayForward announced Clock Tower coming to mobile. Not mobile. I don't know why the mobile game just came back to haunt me, but it's coming to modern platforms. The game is getting its official worldwide localized release. It couldn't be a better time to be a Clock Tower fan than now. Of course, it was always cool to be a Clock Tower fan. Just
exactly.
Saying. But, you know, where were you when you heard the announcement? What was your reaction? And I know you, of course, are, but I have to ask, are you looking forward to the release?
No, I'm dreading it.
No Clock Tower, not for me.
Not for me. My Clock Tower days are behind me, boys. I was actually live streaming while I was while the announcement happened.
Oh, really? What were you doing? What were you playing?
Embarrassed to admit, I was playing Nightcry for some reason. I think. I think, if I'm remembering it correctly, because I remember turning to the chat, and then there was people saying, Tango, Clock Tower got announced, Clock Tower got announced. I was getting loads of people, and I was like, guys, don't do this to me. Do not mess with me like this, guys.
Your chat's pranking you.
I fully would have believed it. It's not the first time it's happened. You know, someone deciding to be cruel, and I didn't need my heart to break again, you know, so I didn't buy it. And then people were like, no, seriously, tune into Limited Run. They're talking about it right now. And I was tuned in, I threw it up on the screen, we all watched it, and there it was in all its glory, the WayForward announcement. And I just, oh my god, man, I can't even describe the emotions, because it was like only a few months prior I was just like, you know, recovering from the Silent Hill transmission, which is another very near and dear franchise to me. So it was like, this is two of my favorite franchises getting revived in the span of 12 months. What is this? What's going on here, you know? Seeing the artwork, the gorgeous artwork that's done for the game, the fact it's going to have an opening by, I believe, Mary Elizabeth McGlynn, who's also associated with Silent Hill. So it's like, what the hell is this? This announcement was way for me, you know? Like, but I can't wait. Personally, almost more than the game itself, I can't wait to see the limited edition goods, because, oh my god, I will throw all my money at Limited Run. I don't care what's in it. It'll be official Clock Tower merchandise for like the first time, and I know that there was the pop-up shop in Japan, but easily accessible Clock Tower merchandise for the first time in about 20 years. Like, what timeline are we living in? You know, like, what a glorious day it was for Clock Tower fans, you know, it was crazy.
That merch is going to be insane. I cannot wait to see what they have in store. I'm very curious if they are going to be bringing items from the pop-up shop, because the pop-up shop ended up not happening.
Oh, is that what happened? Okay.
Yeah, so it's a complicated story, but basically, you know, they announced the pop-up shop at the Akihabara container, and then, like, I think a week before, they said, oh, sorry, we had to postpone the event, we'll give updates soon, and they never gave any updates. I don't think Twitter had been updated. I think the website was either not updated or shut down, and then, for some reason, we have the mini acrylic standees. It's the only remnant from the pop-up shop. I guess they were low gashapon items, but I would hope maybe like some like unique merch, or maybe they'll repurpose the merch from the pop-up shop. In any case, we're already getting so many like extra goodies that they've announced so far with this extra release. We're getting the art gallery, we're getting the animated intro. I think they said manga cutscenes as well. So it's like extra touches to this like already great game. Mind-blowing.
I never knew about the pop-up shop. That's fascinating to me. I knew the pop-up shop existed technically, but I didn't know that story. That's fascinating.
That's pretty much all it did. It just existed.
Wow, that's crazy. So we'll never get those goodies. Well, maybe they might be repurposed, yeah, but is there any like items that you're hoping will make it into a limited edition? Like, personally, I would love, as out there as this may be, I would love even just like a tiny little figure of Bobby, something like that. I don't know, just a little like 3-4 inch tall tiny little figure. I could just sit him on my desk and he'll be with me forever. Like, something like that would just make me die of happiness. Is there any like goodies you're hoping might make it in, if they did brand new merch, that is?
For that, I think I'd like to actually ask you, how do you like your collector's editions? Like, because like everyone has like their like different like ideas of collector's editions, and like seems like just about every game has like their own, like there's like 5 different collector's editions for like one game these days, it seems. What do you usually like to see in your collector's editions?
God, that's a tough one. I feel like I always want I always like merchandise or goodies that are actually not just going to end up becoming paperweights. You know,
Mhm.
like like if they announce something like a CD or, you know, a soundtrack or an art book, that's cool. I'm
Mhm.
not going to say no,
Mhm.
but I guess once you read them once or once you listen once, that's kind of it. After that, it does become a little bit of a dust collector. I mean, you could say the same thing about the figure, I guess, but that's a tough one. You know, I don't normally get limited editions. Clock Tower is going to be the first one I buy in like possibly a decade. So, man, I guess, you know, if I'm trying to go out on a whim, maybe this wouldn't really be possible for a limited edition unless they had some specific way of doing this. But I guess I always am fond of like t-shirts and hoodies and stuff like that.
Mhm.
I still don't own a Clock Tower shirt of any variety. That would be a welcome surprise. Or maybe like something like a wall scroll, you know, those kind of things that you can actually display and
Yes.
look at and go, ah, there's Bobby.
just wake up at sunrise and you're like, hi lamp, hi clock, hi Bobby.
Hi, Bobby, my boy, over
Yeah,
there in the corner.
yeah. Oh my god. My minimum requirements for a collector's edition: art book, soundtrack CD. I am a sucker for art books and soundtrack CDs. Specifically in my case, I'm a big music listener, and I spend a lot of my time listening to a variety of music. In the case of Clock Tower especially, like Clock Tower has a lot of memorable songs. There's no wrong way to listen to Clock Tower's music. I mean, we've been listening to Clock Tower's music unofficially through game rips for years, but to have a physical, tangible form of listening to Clock Tower's music would be fulfilling to me personally. And I love seeing all the art that's associated with the project, either like original development art or concept art, and even like new art, because we're getting new art as well. It's just good to like see like the developers like heads and their mindsets of like what they approach and what they like, what they don't like, and that creative process like really sucks me in. And it's especially special since we haven't had much for Clock Tower come out in recent years. Aside from the 20th anniversary sound collection, you recently picked up a copy, didn't you?
That's right, I do. It's right behind me, actually. Yes. The massive box. That's a beautiful, beautiful box.
It contains music from like 4 different versions of Clock Tower 1 and then Clock Tower 2 and Ghost Head.
Yes, exactly. The CDs are gorgeous. I know, rich of me to say, very rich of me to say, normally I wouldn't go for art books and CDs, and I just did that for Clock Tower. I'm a simp for this franchise. All my rules and morals go out the window when Clock Tower comes along. But actually, to be fair, an art book for this release of Clock Tower SNES would be welcome, actually. I think I'm on board with you when you explained it there, because if it was just all art that's been available for like 30 years, I'm kind of like, I can pass. It's all on, you know, the wiki or whatever. But when it's brand new art that could be never before seen, never mind. You got me. I'm on board.
Definitely. I'm an art student. I'm a sucker for art books, and yeah, and we already know that there's going to be new artwork to coincide with the release, thanks to WayForward. We actually had the chance to talk to Muriel Cartwright, who is the creative lead for the new release of Clock Tower, and she's a big fan of the series herself. Everyone knows of the key art that they showed for the LRG 3 reveal, and I remember when we at Team Cuts first saw that announcement key art that we were like, oh my god, there's going to be new art for this. What they revealed, Mariel's take on Jennifer, we were like, this still evokes the feeling of Clock Tower, but it's modernized while still retaining the spirit of Clock Tower. And we're also going to be getting a lot of other forms of art for this release, like that animated intro that they said. So we personally had no problem with it. A lot of people loved the artwork. There were still some people that might have been on the fence about the artwork. There's a little bit of divide. And we typically don't like to go into, I'm going to say controversy, even though it's not really controversy. We don't really like to get into controversy. What did you think about the art reveal when you first saw it? If I remember correctly, you liked the artwork when you saw it, right?
Yeah. I wasn't expecting it to be of the more, you know, anime, manga-esque variety, to be fair, but I welcome it with open arms. I think that the artist is incredibly talented. I can only imagine how excited she was, going by what she said in the WayForward announcement, that, you know, she loved the franchise, and then to be an art lead, like wow, what an honor that would be. You know, I guess the way I see it as well is that, like, I don't really think that people get to be annoyed, because
Yeah.
we've been like 30 years or so, not 30, no, that's way too long, 20-ish years without Clock Tower content, and you guys are arguing about the art style? Come on now.
We've been in a sort of a drought.
Yeah, to put it lightly. So, like, hey, I'll take what, like, if the art style was absolutely god-awful in somehow, it's like, it's still a re-release. I'm taking it. I don't care.
Yeah.
You know?
There's a lot good that'll be coming from this release. The main thing is that Clock Tower is going to have more of a presence, and a younger generation can be exposed to this hard gem. And who knows where the series could go from here. I think it all depends on how much we want to support this game, and we very much want to support it. I think it's evident from us talking that.
Yes, that's the thing. If people want this franchise, this is the way I see it, is this is our shot at getting this franchise back. I definitely would say that this re-release is a way to test the water, see if there's enough interest in maybe a remake, maybe even a brand new Clock Tower. I mean, look at Alone in the Dark. Like, that's a franchise that has been dormant for less time than Clock Tower, and it's coming back all of a sudden with a brand new game. It's a reimagining of sorts, and I think if you want them to do anything with this IP, you gotta show them your cash. You gotta show them your cash. If it sells terribly, they'll just be like, all right, okay, no one likes Clock Tower, bye guys, and then it'll go dormant for another 20 years. I mean, like, I'm not, look, hey, I the one time you gotta indulge in capitalism, okay? You gotta get Clock Tower back on its feet, all right? I'll do it. I'm probably going to buy it like 2 or 3 times, maybe one physical, one digital, something like that. I don't know. I'll be buying it for sure.
Capitalism for Capcom.
Exactly. That's where the cap comes from.
Yeah, which I think was also interesting. Seeing the Capcom logo in the credits for the WayForward announcement video, there seemed to be like a little confusion with like who owned the rights to Clock Tower. It's interesting that Clock Tower is still very much a Capcom franchise, so maybe an RE-ified Clock Tower. It's wishful thinking. You know, there are people that still want Haunting Ground to be re-released, because that game is currently a nightmare to get physically. So.
Yes. You know, if there's anyone whose hands, I think that Clock Tower is in good hands if it's with Capcom, because they make Resident Evil, which is absolutely their moneymaker right now. And if they already know that the horror genre works if you make a good game, because the remakes of Resident Evil are proving that. So this is probably, like, I don't know how truly involved Capcom are with this re-release, but the sheer fact their name is in the credits, it definitely means they're keeping an eye on it. So for all we know, if this sold crazy well, Capcom would say, all right, guys, let's try our hand at a remake, maybe, or a brand new Clock Tower title. It doesn't even have to be like AAA. It doesn't have to be like Resident Evil budget. It could even just be maybe a slightly lower scale release, slightly lower budget, whatever. I don't know how it works exactly. I ain't a game developer, but something. I feel like Capcom clearly have their eyes on it. So that's why we gotta let them hear it, you know?
Buy Clock Tower. Buy Clock Tower now.
Yes, exactly. What we're saying. Everyone listening, please buy Clock Tower. Please, we're begging you.
Please, just buy Clock Tower. So now, taking a breather from our love for Clock Tower, you mentioned a few series or genres outside of Clock Tower that you enjoy playing, such as Kingdom Hearts, Final Fantasy. What series or genre outside of Clock Tower? Well, what a series are you into?
Still within the horror genre, I also have to give a shout out to Siren. I really like those games.
Nice.
Made by or rather from the same mind as Silent Hill, so it's no surprise really. But completely removed from horror, anything RPG-esque, so primarily JRPGs. Anything in that genre, I always have time for it. Don't have as much time for it now, being an adult, but and having adult obligations, but I always have a fondness for JRPGs. And also, other weeby genres. Like I really like visual novels. I really just like storytelling, and a visual novel cannot be more about story if it tried. It's literally just a book. So visual novels for sure. And I also grew up with a lot of like platformers, so things like Sly Cooper, Jack and Daxter, Ratchet and Clank, Crash Bandicoot, like vibrant, colorful, visually memorable kind of franchises like that, which is a complete, you know, other end of the scale from gloomy horror, but just things that like, I love things that just have a really distinct visual style. As an artist, I'm sure you probably know that feeling. But yeah, just stuff like that. It's there's something comforting to me about platformers. I guess it reminds me of when being a kid playing all those games, you know?
Oh yeah. I think I saw a meme somewhere. I can't remember if it was Instagram or Twitter, but it was like visual novel fans, oh, this gameplay is so cool, and it's like the gameplay and it's just like a controller with one button. And I was like,
so
oh,
true.
that hurts. It's true, but it hurts. Yeah.
It hurts my soul, but they're so correct.
Visual novels that come to your mind, do you?
So I guess within the horror genre for sure, things like Umineko or Higurashi, if you're familiar with those. Yes, exactly. Which is actually the guy that wrote those, Ryuki Shio7, is going to be working on Silent Hill F, so that's very exciting.
Oh, hey.
Yeah, which is a really unexpected announcement. But those are definitely staples of the horror or thriller. You know, they're kind of fall in between the two genres, I would say sometimes. And then if you want something that's a bit more slice of life, a little bit more chilled out, cutesy maybe, albeit it will definitely break your heart and make you cry by the end of it. Clannad is a great shout.
I had a feeling you were going to mention Clannad. I was like, oh my god.
Let's go. Yeah, that's a really, really great entry level visual novel as well. It's just easy to digest. It's emotional. It has a bit of romance in there, and you know, the anime is great too. Don't get me wrong, but the visual novel is just, you know, it's kind of like a situation like, oh, the film will never be as good as the book. It's the anime will never be as good as the visual novel, in my opinion.
It's just like a chain after chain. Just play the visual novel.
Exactly. That's the real experience right there, boys.
I love Clannad. I have friends who play Clannad, and you know, even the anime I don't remember as well as the visual novel, but the anime is cool too. I very much grew up with a lot of slice of life anime, especially the ones that make you cry. You know, Clannad, Angel Beats.
Any love for Fruits Basket?
So everyone around me. Everyone around me was Fruits Basket, but for some reason I didn't get into it. I don't know if it was like, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have hated it because I don't have like a hatred for it that I'm aware of. I think it was just that I wasn't around for enough of it, and I know that it got a reboot, and
yes, it did,
I've heard mixed things about it.
I've not watched the reboot yet because I'm a very like selective anime watcher.
Same.
Like it's kind of like it either has to be like 26 episodes tops, or else it has to be something really fascinating. I can't like dedicate to the multi-hundred episode shows by any stretch. I've not watched the reboot. It looks cool. It's definitely had a bigger budget than the 2000s anime, but personally for me, I prefer the manga.
Right.
I'll always go back to the manga. It's just it's kind of like the visual novel movie thing, or should I say visual novel anime thing. The OG will always have the most detail and the best experience for me personally, but the animes are okay. They're okay. They do the job.
Of course.
If you really don't want to read the manga, the anime will do, you know?
Yeah, I totally agree. You're currently working on a bunch of projects for your channel. You've covered such a wide variety of games. So is there like a game or a series that you would like to play or cover at some point?
There's one that it's kind of like my goal as a YouTuber. Yeah. Like once I cover this, I'm not done, but like I'll have achieved a life goal if I manage to ever make this video.
Okay.
There's a very fascinating Japan-only franchise called, well, the franchise is just called Simple. And some of the games have been localized in English, but they are always renamed in English. So it's kind of one of those franchises where it's like, you might have played one of them, but you didn't realize it's part of a massive franchise because it got renamed and kind of disassociated with the original. But the whole shtick with this franchise that has over 300 games, mind you, because it's been going since the 90s and still releases games to this day, is that they're budget games. So they make things like, there could be some of them that are like dating sims, there's horror games, there's adventure, puzzle, sports, simulators, everything. They do everything. It's an insane franchise. I've played some of the puzzle ones, which is how I got introduced to it. And I would love one day, when I get the money to somehow amass over 300 imported Japanese games, I would love to do a video at least touching on all of them. You know, some of them might be like, oh, it's a sports game. Like, what else do you want to know? It's a sport. You know, you kind of have to gloss over it. But there's got to be some weird ones in there because they're very janky.
Yeah.
Like, they wear the fact that they're a budget game on their sleeve. And I feel like there's got to be some meme potential in here for sure.
Oh, yeah.
So that's a video down the line. I can't say when. I don't know if I'll ever be able to do it, but I will most certainly try.
I've seen so many of those games pop up during my searches, specifically in Surugaya. A lot of them have popped up. I think I've seen like other YouTubers. Shout outs to Vine Sauce. Vinny's done a lot of corruptions on the Simple series. I think there's a lot of PS1, PS2 games for the Simple series,
yes.
And I think.
And then they kind of thinned out after the PS1 and PS2. I think
Chanbara Beauty came out of the Simple series, or maybe it was.
Yes. Yeah, it's kind of one of those ones where if you dig through their catalog, there's probably one in there you've either seen before or watched someone play it. Like the one that got a bit of traction recently, Eurothug 4000 did a video on it. It's called the Tairio Jigoku, or in English, The Overwhelming Hell, which was like a bug-themed horror game on the PS2. And it's, janky, goofy, but they've got charm. I think in their lack of polish, they have a charm to them.
Yeah.
And, as well, they had a thing with those Simple games where they would cost as much as the series. So, for example, on the PS2, there was the Simple 2000 range, and every game in that range only cost 2,000 yen, which is like $20, $18 equivalent. Which is that's cool, because it's like you're only paying $18. You don't really have a right to get too annoyed if it's a little bit jank or low budget, because you're only paying like $20 for it. And there's a certain charm to, I guess, how honest the franchise is, for lack of a better word. And I think that there's got to be some bangers. There's probably some absolute stinkers in there too, but that would make for a fun video one day, I think.
Oh yeah, definitely. You said that some of them have come overseas but have been renamed. Can you think of any outlandish ones that you may have seen?
Oh yes, there was one that they did a sniper range on the PS2, and I believe there was 3 of them total, but only one ever got localized. I can't remember the English name for the life of me. Oh my goodness, it might just be called the Sniper. I think it's that simple. And that's simple.
Yeah.
And there was that one. Yeah, I played that actually a few months ago, and the English dub is an absolute treat. It is absolutely awful voice acting. It is just it's the jank. It's the gameplay is okay. It does the job. It's nothing special. It's just like a level based game, and you have to hit the target or, shoot those things, and you're a sniper, obviously. But the voice acting in between is just, oh my goodness, it's that late 90s, early 2000s garbage acting. If you want a dose of that, please look up cutscenes from the Sniper. You will not regret it. It's a great one. That was a Simple game, but yeah.
Oh, okay. Is it kind of like Lifeline in terms of its acting? I don't know if you...
I'm aware of that. I've never watched anything about it, admittedly. So I can't speak for the voice acting, but if you're familiar with the early Resident Evil titles and that really stilted, kind of almost homemade kind of voice acting.
Watch out, there's monsters. Ouch.
Ouch. Oh my god, imagine getting a massive snake bite and the best you have to say is ouch. Oof, owie, ouch. Come on, man.
Owie, ouch. Yeah, we'll definitely have to take a look at that. There's a new recommendation for all y'all out there. Watch the cutscenes of the Sniper. It's your homework.
Exactly. Oh my god, you won't regret it.
Who knows? Someone out there might do a Team Cuts, but for the Simple series. You could be the one to start that.
Oh my god, guys, I might have to start it. It's a revolution.
Well, then, if that video were to ever happen, and also in general for any other videos, any topics, any games that you plan to cover, where can people find you on social media?
Yes, I go by Tangomushi on both YouTube and Twitch. I stream horror games primarily 3 times a week over on Twitch, and I upload video essays, retrospectives, all that jazz on YouTube. I try to go for once a month, but give and take on the size of the video. And I also am on Twitter, at I Love Klim. Klim. Yeah, that's me on Twitter, and that's all I'm on.
Okay, cool. While I have you, this is probably the only chance I'll ever get to ask you this question. Where does the name Tangomushi come from?
Oh, okay. Okay, the insider info.
Yeah.
So, tangomushi with a D in Japanese is I believe in America they're called pill bugs. You know, those little bugs? And basically, I just changed dango to tango, like the dance.
Yeah.
Because I guess you could kind of translate tangomushi as kind of like jitterbug, because mushi means bug in Japanese. So it's kind of like a play on words.
Oh, that would come full circle if you ever played that simple bug game.
Exactly. All the mushis around the place, right?
Yeah. Everywhere. The experimental horror game. I always wanted to play as a bug. Why aren't there more horror games that get to play as a bug? But
you can be tangomushi too if you play that video game.
Well, when I read Tango, I thought of one of two things. I thought of Tango, like the dance, and mushi is the bug. Or like, I was thinking, I don't know why, like tangy mustard. Cause
yeah, you know, like I get a lot of variations of the name. Some people call me mango sushi. I got banjo coochie one time. Just people. There seems to be a lot of potential with my username somehow for jokes. So yeah, and also I also found out that the word mushi in German means a rather unfortunate word. I'm not going to say it.
That's okay.
On this for just to keep things clean,
yeah,
but rather unfortunate.
Rather unfortunate.
What mushi means in some languages.
We can stick with bug. We like bugs.
We like bugs. We prefer bugs.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Tango. It was great talking to you. I've watched your videos, enjoyed your content. We at Team C.U.T.S love, of course, your Clock Tower videos, but it's fun watching your coverage, and we look forward to seeing what you'll do in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Team C.U.T.S and Diario and everybody. I appreciate everything you guys do, and I was absolutely honored that you asked me onto this, so thank you very, very much.
And for all of you who would like to check out more of Tango's work, we'll have our links down in the description below. And also, while you're at it, follow us on Twitter and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit that notification bell if you want to be notified when a new episode is up. But this has been Deep Cuts, presented by Team C.U.T.S. Thank you for watching, stay tuned, and remember, fear is fascinating.
Oh.
Okay, we're gonna keep that.